since the second half, really, how much they've really struggled. Charged with finding some stability from this guy.
Welcome back to the next episode of A Journey of a Grassroots Rugby Coach. My guest today is Beth Whaanga. She's a mother of 4. She's a forensic criminologist. She has a dual master's in forensic mental health and another in criminology and criminal justice. Beth is also a level 3 rugby coach who has worked across multiple demographics over the past 2 decades and has primarily worked in senior rugby in the men's area for the last 10 years. Beth is a forwards coach and has particular passion towards the scrum and the line-out. Beth was part of the AIS High Performance Coaching Talent Program, and she's also part of the Sports Australia Women in Leadership Program. Beth is an award-winning coach, and she's looking forward to contributing to the Sydney Rugby Community and building female participation over the next few years. Since our chat, Beth has been appointed as the head coach for the Two Blues Premier Women's Team in the Jack Scott Cup competition in Sydney. During our chat, we talked about training needs to be fun, halftime talks, coaching at the Colts level, seeking feedback, and always learning. I really enjoyed this chat with Beth, and she was really gracious with her time. I hope you get as much out of this as what I did.
What I like about Colts though is that they're sort of in that sort of transitional period where they're going from, you know, teenagers into young men, but they're still malleable. You're still able to influence them, and they're still so excited about footy, and it's not just about winning for them, it's about their mates, and it's about the club, and it's about the atmosphere. And I really love that about that age group, that sort of camaraderie, and just the joy that footy brings them as people and as players.
He can't find it. That's a mighty shot. A mighty Mark Lester.
All right, well, we might make a start if you've had a few meetings already, so we can you can get on with the rest of your day or whatever it is you need to do. All right, so Beth, we'll make a start. Thanks so much for your time. Just sort of 30 seconds in a nutshell, just for our listeners. Just give us your story, like where you are, what's your involvement in grassroots coaching, just so people know who we're talking to.
Okay, my name's Beth Whaanga. I am a level 3 coach. I'm a forwards coach. I've been primarily working in the men's space in senior men's rugby, mostly Colts and GPS rugby for the last 10 years, primarily in Brisbane. I'm now located in Sydney. I've been here about 8 weeks and hope to sort of break into the shoot shield space whilst I'm down here. I've done several teams over the last 10 years or more than that, probably 15 years, male, female, 15, 7s, you name it, I've done it. I got into rugby because of my dad. My dad's a diehard rugby fan. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you've sort of covered off the first bit that we're going to talk about. So what got you into coaching? So was it just primarily your dad? Did you play at any stage, or just straight into the coaching space?
No, so I started coaching quite young, and I played. I was a halfback. I still try to be a halfback sometimes, which is probably a bit silly considering I'm 40. Always end up with a broken bone now or a damaged ankle, but I played. My dad was the local club president at Wollongbar-Austinville Rugby for many, many years. And so my childhood was literally spent at a rugby club, setting up fields, marking lines, cooking barbecues, working in a canteen, running the line, anything that my dad wanted me to do, we did. And it wasn't unusual for him to sort of throw me an under-6s team when I was a teenager and say, I don't have a coach for this team, off you go, do your best. Sort of became, I guess, a more noted coach in the Brisbane community in probably around 2015, 16. And I had a coach that I was doing Junior Gold Cup with at the time called Rob Rory. He was from Sunnybank. And he said to me at the time, he said, you're a level 2 coach, but you're always the trainer. Like, why are you never coaching? Like, why aren't you sort of getting your hands dirty and sort of getting in there a bit more? And I said, well, it's not that I don't want to. It's just that I sort of don't get opportunities to do it. And when I apply, I get knocked back. And he said, well, maybe you're asking the wrong people. And after that, I started coaching with Rob in the Colts program at Sunnybank and in rep teams. And he was a really strong supporter of me coaching-wise and really embraced me as a coach and took that on board and gave me those opportunities that no one had ever given me before. So that's sort of how I broke through into that cult space. About 10 years ago now. So, yeah.
And I watched the Brisbane comp a little bit. So there's like three or four divisions of Colts up there. Is that right? Or is there more?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're at Brothers, you might have 4 Colts teams, but most clubs have between 2 and 3.
Okay. So it's a very big, strong competition up there, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, I've coached Colts down here, and they're a difficult age as well.
It's actually my favourite demographic. I love Colts.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it, but they were hard work. Great kids. Great kids, but yeah.
What I like about Colts though is that they're sort of in that sort of transitional period where they're going from teenagers into young men, but they're still malleable. You're still able to influence them, and they're still so excited about footy, and it's not just about winning for them, it's about their mates, and it's about the club, and it's about the atmosphere. And I really love that about that age group, that sort of camaraderie-ship and just the joy that footy brings them as people and as players.
Absolutely. We haven't got a strong Colts competition down here, but a lot of the boys a lot of them just hang around because they just want to play with their mates.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Playing with your mates.
Absolutely, I love it. I love when kids just turn up because they want to play with their mates. So thinking back over your coaching journey, what's one of your heartbreaks or one of your biggest disappointments as a coach?
I think as a coach, there was quite a big role I applied for recently that a lot of people in the community thought that I was going to get, and I got knocked back for it and sought feedback for that position to make me a stronger candidate next time. The feedback wasn't necessarily helpful. So I think sometimes I honestly believed that I had a good look in for this role. And I think sometimes, especially if people sort of bring you up and they go, yeah, this is definitely you've earned it, or it's your turn, or, everyone sort of, what the rugby community is like, they sort of chatty.
Yeah.
And then to sort of have it not come to fruition was really quite difficult for me. But, there's definitely places for me to move forward, and I'll probably get that role eventually, just not right now.
Yeah, that can be disappointing when you go through that process. And I think too, when you said you didn't get the feedback that you looked for, wasn't helpful.
I actually think I think that was actually the hardest part, because what I wanted to do was improve. Yeah. And so for me I'm very much about learning. I've got a double master's degree and spent quite a lot of time based around education. I'm actually just looking at doing my PhD at the moment. And so for me, I'll seek feedback, because learning and growth is such a big part of who I am. And so if I can seek that feedback so that I can improve, that's something that I'm always going to do. And I sort of relish that information so that I can grow and I can develop. So that's pretty disappointing to me, to actually not get anything constructive that I can actually use.
Yeah, that's just, yeah, like you said, that is disappointing. But it also probably teaches you, like when you're giving feedback, you don't want to be that person that they go, well, I'm not going to ask her for feedback because she doesn't give me anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, when we look at feedback, it has to have a good balance of, you know, what's constructive, but also chuck some praise in there as well and go, actually, this is what you're doing well.
Yeah.
You know, and this is how you can improve on those things. But what we'd like you to do is work on these couple of little things so that it strengthens your strengths, you know, so that you grow as an overall, rather than going, hey, well, you're doing this, this, and this, not quite right, or, you know, you're rubbish at this, or this is your weakness. So I like that sort of, that little bit of constructive feedback as well, where they go, yeah, you know what, you do this really well. You do this better than the other candidates. However, this is where you're lacking. Let's try and build this over the next 6 months to a year so that next time you come through, you're stronger.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we need that with our players as well. Like if I'm doing a halftime chat, actually I got this from Grips years and years and years ago. I can't remember where he said it came from originally, but we're talking about halftime talks and how lots of coaches will walk into a halftime talk and they focus purely on the negative aspects of the game. And they would just come in and rip these players apart and go, oh, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're not doing this. And I made a conscious choice to really focus on 3 good things. So if I walk into any team that I'm working with, at a halftime chat, I go, okay, because I don't want to overwhelm my teams as well. I go, give me 3 things we're doing well. Because, you know, as a coach, I already know what they're not doing well, you know, and then I'm going to plan my coaching sessions around that over the next couple of days. What I like about that is it brings them up first and they go, yeah, they had that self-awareness and that acknowledgement and that also that accountability. And I go, great. Okay. So we're doing this, this, and this well. Okay. Now give me 3 things we need to work on as a team. What are 3 things we can just do better this second half?
Yeah.
Right. And by doing that, you're not bringing the mood down, you're bringing it up. You're creating self-awareness as players and positional, and you're also holding those kids accountable or those players accountable, and they go, okay, well, she respects our opinion or he respects our opinion, and they value that. And I think that's actually really important, and that in turn, it increases game IQ and you get that better result on the field because as players start to become more aware of their functional roles and how they work together. So that cohesion.
Yeah. And the players know what they're doing. Like you said, you know what they're doing well. They know 100%. That, and they know what they're not doing well either. So just getting that balance right of giving them the right level of up and the right level of down, so that they you know, you don't want to, you know, boost them up that much that they actually drop off, which I've seen done so many times as well. Because they walk out thinking, oh, we've got this and we're great and this and that, and they get absolutely annihilated in the second half. But well,
they still have to have that respect for their opposition as well.
That getting that balance right. Yeah, no, that's really good. So I want to flip that last question on its head. And some of the greatest moments you've had as a coach.
There's a couple in there. I was asked this question last week as well, and I had an athlete that I've worked with over an extended period of time called Madison Levi, who debuted at the Tokyo Olympics a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
For the Aussie women's sevens team, and she scored 2 tries on debut, and that was an amazing moment for me. I stood and cheered at work in my office and carried on like a lunatic. It was definitely a highlight for me. You know, I was texting her mum and she was texting me, and then, you know, I sent Maddie a message just saying, you know, I'm just so bloody proud of you. You know, like she just had done so well, and, you know, everyone calls this kid my rugby daughter, and you know, I really valued that moment, and just seeing her achieve that was fantastic. And then I was the first woman to be appointed to a GPS rugby team ever. And Brisbane State High School did that with me in 2017. And it was, you know, it was really important to me at the time that I coached in a co-educational school, because I wanted to be involved as well in their sevens program that Sione was running. And the Brisbane State High School sevens team back then was run exceptionally well, and I wanted that opportunity to learn from Sione as well. But 15s has sort of always been my passion, and to sort of break into that very, very closed off demographic was very challenging, and I've been trying to break into that space for quite some time. And so I'm always grateful to Brisbane State High School for giving me that opportunity. And, you know, GPS rugby has definitely had its highs and its lows for me, where, you know, people have treated me pretty disrespectfully on occasions. But, you know, from my own school and from my players and my parents and the support staff around me and the other coaches in that program, all they've ever done is lift me up and bring me up and help support me through that process. So, yeah, I'm really grateful that I got that opportunity, but also to be in that co-educational environment, you know, with those girls there in that rugby program. It helped break down a lot of barriers around coaching staff and what they thought a rugby coach should be. And, you know, some of these young men that I'd coached, you know, since they were 12 until they was, you know, 17, had never had any other coach, and I wasn't a female coach to them. I was just their rugby coach. And I think that was really good for them. And it sort of removed all that gender, and we had very successful seasons. And you know, like I had a few dads here and there that went, "No, you're not coaching my son," and I just went, "Well, actually, I am." So, and then, you know, at the end of the season, they came back, and I had a couple say, "You know, actually, I was wrong, and I'm really sorry." And I've got great rapport with their parents even now, and so that's definitely a really great moment for me, is that the acceptance into that GPS community, and having that opportunity just to break down that barrier and to be the first to break it down, I think is really significant and really important to me. And I would really like to see more women in that space. And hopefully, because they've seen me do it, have the confidence to apply and get out there and give it a crack. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that female role as a coach, like I said, that will get bigger and bigger. There'll be more females into it. And just around the whole rugby space, like women's rugby is just taking off all over the world.
It's our fastest growing demographic.
It's unbelievable. Like and not just in Australia, like worldwide. It's just and you know, and I think the way, and I'm not sure whether, and you probably know more about it than I do, it was either a World Rugby or Australian Rugby initiative to get some of the identified coaches into like assistant roles for the next World Cup in New Zealand for the and there was a lot of those up and coming female coaches put into those roles so they could develop themselves to take that next step, which is fantastic.
That's absolutely great, and we want those sort of initiatives. You know, part of the reason why I've coached in the men's space for so long was because there was no female coaches. They just didn't exist. Even now, they're few and far between. And part of the reason why I coached in that men's space was part of the reason why I still do coach in the men's space is because there's that wealth and depth of knowledge that I can tap into and learn and grow from. And then, you know, as that next lot of women comes through, especially those ex-professional players that want to transition into coaching, they've actually got someone that they can go to and somebody they can relate to. Because I didn't have that. You know, I remember the first time I saw Moana Virtue at Sunnybank, and it was the first time that I'd ever seen another female coach, ever. And it was really good for me. The same with Alana Thomas. You know, I'm quite good friends with Lance, and having that sounding board, but I didn't get that until I'd been coaching for, you know, over 10 years. So I think that's really important that we start having those opportunities. But in saying that, you still have to be the best person for the role. You know, you can't chuck somebody into that space that's not quite ready for it. But some of that is still that coach development. So making it a female or a less experienced coach, male or female, that development coach, and, you know, checking for understanding, checking knowledge, and giving them those mentoring opportunities just so that we can help grow the quality of male and female coaches in Australia is really important. And by doing that, we're just going to boost our grassroots as well, and we're going to have better quality players that start to come through our top ranks. So I'm always keen for that. Like, any development opportunity that I get or that I can give somebody else, I'm always up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's probably getting better than what it was when I first started coaching those development opportunities. We always had the education side of it, where you go and you do, you know, your level 1, your level 2, you know, level 3, whatever it was, and then you just walked out and then that was it. Where now I think there's more, like you said, there's more opportunities to develop yourself as a coach. And one thing that 2020 has taught me is that I've sat in on so many of these Zoom chats and webinars, and people are so generous with their time. And most of the time it's just being able to ask them. And I think as young coaches, a lot of people get that, a fear of asking someone, thinking, oh, I'm going to look stupid if I ask that, and not realizing that that person you're talking to was exactly where you are, and they probably didn't have someone to bounce that idea off. So they probably took longer to learn it because there wasn't that development opportunities back then. It was very, and I suppose too, because it was one coach to the team, where now you've got your head coach and 3 or 4 different, backs coach, forwards coach, this coach. You can put a development coach into one of those roles and be mentored by a couple of other senior coaches, which sort of wasn't the norm years ago either. So yeah, there's just a.
So I think that it's really important though that I think as well though, you ask for those opportunities. Like, you don't ever expect them just to be given to you. So like I know there's plenty of coaches that I've said, can I sit and watch your coaching session and just be on the sideline so that I can observe and ask questions at the end? And, some of those learning opportunities are really important for growth as well, because, you can actually see it in front of you and then experience it. And then, you can go, your understanding of what they're trying to achieve or their outcomes might actually not be it. So when you go back to that coach and go, hey, I'm a little bit confused about this. What was the outcome there, or what were you trying to achieve? And then applying that to your own understanding, so that when you take that knowledge and you apply it to your own coaching sessions, you get better outcomes. And I think that's really, really important. I think asking for help and asking for those development opportunities tends to be a little bit hit and miss with lots of people, and they tend to shy away from that. But for me personally, that's something that I personally always seek out, because it's not an opportunity that I ever want to miss. Yeah,
and I think I was one that struggled to ask people for help for a long time. But yeah, that's changing now, because I think the opportunities are there. But yeah, you're right. Even just standing there and watching another coach, whether they're you're the 3rd grade coach and they're the 1st grade coach, or you're the 2nd grade coach, watch the 4th grade coach, because you'll pick something up from him as well.
100%.
And watch other sports, watch other coaches in other sports.
I remember standing and watching an under-12s training session last year, and I was asked by that coach to go and watch it and give feedback. And I was like, yeah, righto. But I learned stuff from that coach about how he interacted with those young people. And, I think you can learn from anybody. It doesn't matter if they're 1st grade, 4th grade, under 12s, under 6s. You can always take something from somebody else and you go, yeah, you know what, I like that. That person did that well. I'm going to see how that works with my group. And, it might be the smallest little thing. And nobody knows everything. Like, nobody does. And I think the people that think that they do are limiting themselves, because our game is ever evolving, so we need to be ever evolving.
Mm. Yeah. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And although it's evolving, we haven't really changed a lot of what we do. Like, they're the same drills, they just get tweaked for, you can run the same drill at an under 10s as what you can do for a Super Rugby team. You just change the parameters and the constraints and the intensity, but it's pretty much, if you broke it down, they want to achieve the same things, just at different levels.
I think that's really important, though. I think good basic core skills are what we need to execute our game well. And if we start to overcomplicate it, then we start to get players, athletes that are confused. People always talk about the difference between the Wallabies and the All Blacks. Well, what the Wallabies lack in comparison to the All Blacks is good core skills. Like, I remember reading I can't remember whose book it was. I think it was Richie McCaw's book. And them talking about those repetitive movements every training sessions, and just those, those little block sessions on those core skills and how important they were each session. When we start to overcomplicate things, then you add to that confusion, and people start to get confused about what their role is, or they just can't execute it on the fly. So they start to not read the game as well. So I think as well, what happens with a lot of training sessions is you'll get somebody who plans, or worse, doesn't plan, and they don't understand how to connect those drills together for that end game outcome. So, they might focus on one drill for 20 minutes with no expansions, and then you've got athletes who become bored and complacent, or they just stop executing well, or they can't see progression or how that applies to game. So we need to really look at that and go, okay, well, what do our expansions need to be? How does it relate? And then how does it appropriate to our gameplay? And that gets lost a little bit in coaching as well. So I think that's really important as well, that we really focus on how, when we're utilising these drills, whether it's at an under 10s or a first grade or a fourth, whatever grade level, that we have that progression and that it's actually relevant.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I've often seen, and you've probably seen it too, you see a coach doing a drill or an activity with the kids and you just go, oh, you've seen that on YouTube. And you can tell because they've got no relevance to actually what the outcome of the drill is. But I get a lot of stuff off YouTube, but then you sit back and you go, so how do I make that work with my group of players? Like I said, if they can't do it, what do I do? If they nail it first time, how do I make it harder for them? And just have that, progression, regression, and have it all there, instead of just, I think a lot of coaches just, they look on YouTube or Instagram or wherever and just see, an international team or a top level team doing a drill, and they go, yeah, we're going to do that on Tuesday. And they just got no context around it. So for young coaches, just be able to break down a drill.
You've got to be able to be versatile. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that versatility is really important in coaching.
So what I want to talk about now is...
but I think some of that as well is understanding your demographic.
Yeah.
And their game IQ and,
Yeah. And that sort of leads us into the next bit I want to touch on, is because you've done a fair bit of work around the cult space and the GPS system, where you've potentially got, kids that are going to be good rugby players, potentially professional rugby players, and you've got the kids there that just want to play footy with their mates, can't catch a cold in the middle of winter, but they want to play. They're probably going to grow up and be the guy around the club that just does everything because they love the sport and they love being around their mates, but he's never going to be anything than a third or fourth grader. What do you do in your sessions to, keep that guy that is potentially the next professional coming through? How do you keep him so that he's progressing while also keeping the guy that's, not progressing as much? Keep them both engaged in the same session?
I think that training has to be fun.
Yeah, nice.
It just does. I also think that, we obviously use such a solid grading system as well. I think if you're going to apply it to, what you just brought up, you'd probably actually look at it more in a female context, because in female rugby, in any sort of female rugby team, you can literally have a Wallaroo, a Super W player, and a woman who's just rocked up on, a Thursday night to have a crack. Whereas within a Colts context, you're going to have Colts 1, 2, and 3, and in GPS rugby, you're going to have A, B, C, Ds. So you sort of don't get that imbalance. Whereas in women's rugby, you do. I think what I do is I use a lot of game-based drills.
Yep.
To keep it enjoyable. I like to give praise instead of criticism. And I use small bribes. I had a Colts 3 team a few years ago. And I do this with my GP. Actually, I do it a lot, to be honest. I'll bring a block of chocolate, and I call it a chocolate challenge. And I'll say to this group, okay, like whoever executes the most tackles, or whoever is, the most supportive in play, or, whatever, gets a chocolate. But I might, get the group to vote for it at the end, who gets it. No, I always bring a bag of snakes. Just little things like that. But I always think that game-focused training sessions are the best. Being able to take a skill and apply it within a game sense makes it fun, and that's what rugby is. Rugby is a kid's game that we're lucky enough to play as adults, and if you can make it fun and enjoyable, then people will keep engaging. Like, it shouldn't be monotonous, it shouldn't be repetitive, it shouldn't be a chore for players, especially these young guys who are tradies, or they're uni students, and they've just worked all day, and then they're giving up 2 hours of the evening when they're tired, or they're taking 2 hours out away from their families to come to training. The last thing they want to do is be drilled by someone going, nah, and having that sort of authoritarian sense. So if you can make it fun and put an actual smile on your face as a coach, people feed off enthusiasm. And if you sort of sit in that negative, it's all about winning, it's all about this rather than development or fun, then you do lose that engagement, and players do drop off because they don't want to be there, So I don't care if you're in first grade or if you're in sixth grade, there still has to be that social, enjoyable, fun aspect to footy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that game-based stuff, that's really starting to get some good traction in the coaching circles over the last, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, I reckon. I've seen it more and more.
Yeah.
But I think with young coaches coming through, they often think, I've got to do game-based stuff. And then they get there and they've got, 3 guys injured, and this guy can't do that. And they go, oh, I haven't got a full side, or I haven't got this. But for me...
Oh, you just make them smaller games.
Yeah, a 2v1's a game.
Yeah, 100%.
Or even a 1v1, that's a game. Make it, like you said, make it fun, make it enjoyable. If you've got, 10 guys at training because it's the middle of winter and, guys have got work or whatever, mate, play 5v5 or 6v4 or whatever.
Get them to come around the corner.
It doesn't have to be 15 on 15 for it to be game based, which I think a lot of coaches struggle with. It, you can't.
You can always modify activity. Always.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Yeah. And all our stuff, all the line out stuff I do is, this team's attacking, that team's defending, and then I swap them around and throw people in there, and just make them think. That's really good. Really like that. We've sort of covered that bit. We've got through. What about some of the lessons you've learnt over your time as a coach that you could share with some of the younger coaches? Because they're all probably the same. The lessons we've all learnt, but you get to that point when you're first starting and you've got that fear of the unknown, and you don't think that I don't think I'm good enough for this job, or
Mm-hmm.
you know why. But we've all gone through that. So what's some of the lessons that you can pass on that you've learned for people starting out on their coaching journey?
I would say be patient.
Yeah.
Don't be in a rush to get to Super Rugby. Ask for help when you need it. Don't ever think that it's a weakness to ask for help. You know, that's how people learn. That's how people gain knowledge, is by asking questions. I would say strive for excellence so that you're not the exception, you're exceptional. And not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone. And everyone's experience of you will be different to the next person's. And you've just got to take that in your stride. And there's always going to be someone on your team that doesn't like you. And there will always be another coach that you might not get along with, but you have to still be able to work with that person. And that's actually okay, you know, and not to take that as, you know, to heart and take it personally. And when it's hard, and rugby as coaches can be hard, especially through the losses, just to pick yourself up when it's hard and keep moving forward. You know, if you don't achieve your goals, if you stop moving forward and you give up, you know, really, I've got this tattoo on my arm. It's a Richie McCaw quote. It says, "I don't believe in magic. I believe in hard work." And on my other arm, on the other inside, I have "keep moving forward." And they're both applicable to rugby for me. And that even when you get to that sort of point where you think, "No, I don't want to do this anymore. I've had enough." It's worth it because you love the game. And yeah, just when it's hard, keep that love for the game in your heart, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, and like you said, it's supposed to be fun. Yes, there's hard days, but so's life. Like, you have bad days at work,
absolutely.
you have bad days in your relationships, but you don't just throw them away. Take a bit of time to reflect, and yeah, it's a fun job.
You know, one of the things that I love about the rugby community is that we're so close knit. You know, we all know each other. We all support each other. And I don't know if you know this, but I was very, very unwell in 2013, and I had breast cancer, and spent a long time in hospital where I was very, very sick and was in a lot of pain. And my footy club picked up my kids for training and made sure my husband was fed. Well, my ex-husband made sure he was fed and taken care of, and, you know, sent me flowers. And, you know, the boys would just rock up to the hospital and make sure I was okay. And they'd bring me, because I'm addicted to Coke No Sugar, they'd bring me Coke No Sugar and chocolate to the hospital and make sure, you know, that I had everything I needed. And, you know, that was the same thing when I got divorced. You know, my local club really sort of got around me and offered that support, not just to me, but to my kids as well. You know, my kids kept playing at the club, and my ex-husband is still a member of that club as well. And they supported both of us. And, you know, and that's what we are really fortunate to have in that rugby community is how much we sort of get around each other in those times of need. And, you know, you look at the outpouring to Todd and Rachel this week, and, you know, I'm really lucky to have spent so much time with their family, and but to see that sort of general outpouring from the greater rugby community in that time of need is amazing. And that's what rugby is. Rugby is community, especially grassroots rugby. It's community, and that's what I love about it. You know.
Yeah. Oh, and I say to kids right from, you know, under 12s, under 14s, once you get rugby in your veins, it never goes away. And, you know, you can travel the world. You can go to anywhere in the world, and if there's a pub and there's rugby on the TV and you walk in, you've got a room full of mates. You know, like,
you've got friends.
You can work all around the world. You don't have to be a professional player to be a professional rugby person. You can, you know, go and play for some little town in somewhere, and they put you up in, they give you a job, and they just look after you, but they don't pay you, but they look after you. So yeah, it's that whole community and family stuff that goes on. Yeah, absolutely. So no, that's awesome. What advice? Now we've talked about development. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time to when you started coaching, knowing what you know now?
I'd say it'll be really hard. It'll be hard, Beth. It's going to be hard. Don't be discouraged. Just keep going. And it's okay to be alone. It's okay to be the only woman in the space. You'll be all right. Work hard and know when to ask for help. Nice. I think that was the big thing for me, was it's okay to be the only woman, and to ask for that help when I need it, because people will give it to you. You just gotta ask. You just gotta be brave. So I won't lie, being the only woman in the space for a long time was really tricky, but I wouldn't swap it. I would do it all again. So yeah. Ask for help.
Yeah. So with being like the only woman in that space for a long time, was it difficult because you're at that point where it was difficult for you to ask for advice, or was it because they wouldn't help you out because you were a woman in that space? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to, or was it a little bit of both, or?
It's multi-dimensional. It's hard. It was hard because I didn't have anyone I could relate to. So that there was no other female coach. I mean, Shirley was there, but I at the time I didn't have anything to do. Like I loved Shirley, but at the time I wasn't even acquainted with her, and I didn't meet sort of Mo and Alana till much later, and there just wasn't anybody that I could see myself in. And there are definitely people that will still even now say, she's a woman, she can't do it, or less now. Like I've definitely earned my stripes. I'm definitely part of the furniture, but in the beginning, absolutely. I think I'm still taboo, and even though I'm less taboo now, I was definitely the anomaly. So if I think about every advanced coaching seminar that I've ever been to, I've always been the only woman. When I did my level 3, I was the only woman. But nothing's going to change if nothing changes, and somebody has to do it first, and and I've got used to sort of being on my own in that space. But like I said, it's better for me now because there are more female coaches now. There are 5 in Australia now that sort of sit above level 3. When I first started, there wasn't. There was just Shirley and Mo. And now we've got Mo and Ing and Chloe Butler and Alana and myself, and I know there's several more that are starting to come through that that level 2 and level 3 space, and it's just going to keep growing. Like there's no way it can't. And as more and more of our ex-Wallaroos and ex-CW players and ex-Aussie Sevens players, and just the women who love it and want to be more involved start coming through those coaching ranks, then I won't be taboo anymore. And I'll just be still part of the furniture. So it's been tricky.
Yeah, and hopefully we get to the point at some stage in the future, and you touched on it before, where the best person gets the job, whether you're whatever male, female, whatever, the best person gets the job. I think
that's going to take time.
Absolutely it will. Absolutely it will. Yeah, but I think, like you said, slowly it's starting to starting to get there, and there's more players
Triple
coming,
A,
more
yeah.
players coming through. They said that the players that have played at that, you know, Wallaroo or Super W level, or just club, with the expansion of women's club footy, you know, they're going to start coming through and take up those coaching roles as well.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And you know what? It's such a privilege for me to be somebody who can mentor those people and, you know, help them in any way that I can. And like I said, there wasn't anyone for me. So that's actually really, really important to me, that I can help those women that come through, because I don't want them to feel the way that I have felt before. So I think that's a really great opportunity for me to grow as a coach and be that sort of coach mentor to those people coming through. But at the same time, like, if a young man came through and said the same thing, like I had Brisbane State High School gives you a student coach every year, for volunteers that are on merit, and had Harry Graham in Year 12 at Brisbane State High School, and he was my Year 12 volunteer coach. And when Harry graduated Year 12, I kept Harry for another 3 years. Harry Graham stayed my assistant coach. This is the first time in 5 years Harry Graham hasn't been my assistant coach. And, you know, he's amazing. He's so great. I love him. He's got such a bright coaching future ahead of him. He's much better coach than he is a player. And that's where his gift is in the game. And, you know, I loved doing that with Harry. I loved that I was able to help him on that beginning part of his journey. And, you know, like I still call him my Padawan. I think that's really great. And then I've got another coach at Sunnybank. Her name's Shona Moore, and she's working really hard in the women's space and in the sevens space in Brisbane to break down barriers and change things and better herself. And I've been mentoring her for the last 2 years as well. So, you know, I really sort of relish those opportunities to give back when I can. Because, like I said, there just wasn't any females to do that for me. And, you know, I was really lucky. You know, I've had people, you know, like Grips. I mean, poor Grips, he listens to me all the time. And Rob Rory, you know, and Dave Mathias and Grant Dory, especially Grant Dory. I mean, Grant Dory has been an absolute blessing to me. And I definitely wouldn't be the coach that I am without him. And the same as the Baconis, you know, like Buzz, you know, had me come in and work with in their Type 5 Academy, and I got to work with all these other amazing coaches because he saw value in my development. And, you know, so I've been really lucky that way that people have taken that opportunity to mentor me and give me that knowledge that they have. And, you know, I would really like that opportunity to give that knowledge that they're giving to me to somebody else. So, yeah.
Nice. No, that's really good. Beth, that was awesome. I took a heap of notes as we went through that, and I'm sure the listeners will take some things away from that.
I hope so.
Yeah. Oh, and like I do it selfishly as well. You know, if I learn one thing from somebody else, or someone else learns one thing from me, well, you know, happy days.
Here's the thing though. 5-man line out or 6-man line out?
Oh, where are we?
Oh, 22, of course.
Our 22.
Yeah.
Have we got 3 jumpers or 2 jumpers?
Ooh, 3 in the middle.
3 in the middle.
Yeah.
5.
5, me too. Yeah.
This is the stuff that bores everybody, but I could talk about it for hours.
I literally live and breathe it.
I'm trying to get my guys to do a 2-man line out.
Yeah, well, you don't have. They just have to match numbers. I was sitting watching rugby with a mate of mine on Saturday, and because we were like in COVID lockdown, he lives like 2 blocks away, and he goes, "I don't want to watch rugby with you, Beth." And I was like, "You're watching with me. I can't watch it at home in my unit by myself." And he's like, "All right," and he's designated in my bubble, so it's very frustrating. But anyway. Poor Charlie's sitting next to me. And I was like, "Oh my God, look at the loose heads behind. It's too, his elbow's going to, the whole thing's going to collapse." It's like, "Can you see that?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." Sure enough, there it goes. And he was like, "You're the only woman I know that talks about scrum and line out like that." And I was like, is it a good thing or a bad thing? He's like, actually, it's kind of great. And I was like, okay, good. But still.
Yeah. No, that's good. I love it. All right. No, thanks for your time, Beth, and I'll be in touch anyway. And we'll continue on with some other stuff later on.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Good chat.
Righto.
Off their own ball. That is